They're part of a caravan organized by local advocacy groups in Honduras. Caravans happen about once a year, leading people north in a large group for their safety because it is so dangerous to go alone or with smugglers. We saw people walking in 100-degree heat. They were sweating, they were exhausted, but they're determined to reach the U.S. border, roughly 1,500 miles away.
They've been traveling by foot for days. Among them, mothers carrying young children, men being pushed in wheelchairs. This group of about 3,000 Honduran migrants is headed to the United States in search of a better life. Honduras has had one of the highest murder rates in the world since 2010. The World Bank reports that over 66% of the population lives in poverty.
Days ago, but more people are arriving in groups, pitching their tents and waiting for something, although few seem to know exactly what.
Emily Grijalva,
Your
35.
My
name's Kyle. I am 16 years old.
I'm Miss Ramon.
So my understanding is that we have thousands of folks from Central America trying to reach the United States to claim asylum. And most of these folks come from what we call the Northern Triangle, which is Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador. They are fleeing gang violence, poverty. For the LGBTQ migrants, they're fearing their life because of transphobia and homophobia. There's families, there's people who need medical care. I mean, they're leaving because they cannot survive in their countries.
I know that it's around 7,000 Central Americans fleeing their countries in attempt to quote-unquote legally cross into our country right now.
I know it's thousands of people that are fleeing very dangerous, unlivable situations in Central America, specifically in Honduras. A lot of them come from Honduras. Some people come from other countries, but I do know that it's very difficult to live there and it's dangerous, and so they come because anything else is better than their countries.
I'm heartbroken in the sense that I can only empathize. Like, I do not know what it's like to not be able to provide food for my children, to be threatened into a gang, to have seen gang violence or like the amount of murder or the amount of poverty they have. So like, it's almost like weird because it's like really I'm just like a spectator, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I live in the United States, I am a US citizen, I have privilege. And so it's hard to see the images on the media because I almost feel like even though I have this privilege, I still feel hopeless, or helpless too.
I feel mostly negative about it, but I see the point of it. I see the point of it, but I feel mostly negative about it.
I think I have a lot of sympathy. I think if we take a look at U.S. involvement around the world, that's part of the reason why a lot of Latin American countries are the way they are. And so I wish the United States would understand that part of the reason why it's unlivable in Honduras and many of those other countries is because we meddled. And so we can't just meddle in a country and not expect any consequences. And we are experiencing the consequences of our involvement in our exploitation of these countries. So I think that we should keep in mind that we're one of the richest, most developed countries, and we should provide humanitarian aid.
Like, I just feel like that's not what they're trained for, and it's just going to continue the violence. Like, the tear gas is just one thing that's going to happen. It's just going to get worse, and we're almost assuming that there's like a war. Like, they're like, what is he? I mean, he basically makes it seem like they're invaders. Yeah, mm-hmm. Like they're invading the country.
I agree, because as we saw 2 weeks ago, without their reinforcements, they would have completely crossed into the U.S. illegally by normal border control standards. It was uncontrollable. I think it was handled decently. It could have been handled a lot better, but no one died in the incident that happened.
No, I think that's a misuse of our money. Currently, if we take a look at the costs of our country, the military outweighs everything else that we spent on. I do not think that military intervention is warranted by these immigrants. They're not dangerous.
As like invaders, as unruly, as dirty, as ignorant. But then it's weird because sometimes it's like they're all these negative things, and then sometimes they like try to make it seem like they're super like privileged. Like, oh, they're poor, why do they have iPhones? It's like, okay, like everyone has an iPhone. Like, why are you like so fixated on the material wealth as if that like takes away from their need to like come? Or
Most of the media today portrays it as these innocent people, which they are. They are innocent people, but it portrays them as like they're the good guys in this, and the United States government is the evil person. We're the evil empire. I think that's how it portrays it right now.
I think it's a matter of perspective. I think more conservative news outlets might paint them in a very negative light, an unfair light, and I feel other news outlets, like more progressive outlets, might highlight, the humanitarian and the crisis that's happening in their country, and it might create more sympathy for the reason why they're coming to the United States.
no, because of that. And I've been purposely following like some photographers and independent journalists who are living out there, and some like because they actually share like specific stories. Because I think when you just see a bunch of numbers, right, like they're a number, and that's all we can. Oh, there's too many of them. But like this person was following, and he was working with like this dad whose daughter is paraplegic, and he's like trying to like he's pushed her in a little stroller, and somebody eventually like donated a wheelchair for him. And he's just so scared, and he wants medical support, Or this one situation where it's an older lady, and she has a son with Down syndrome, right? And so like those cases you never see in the mainstream, right?
Not completely. I believe in a neutral, unbiased media, and to see a lot of news outlets portray the country like this, it's kind of ridiculous, honestly, because no one seems to recall when Obama ordered pepper spraying of 800 migrants coming up here. No one remembers that. No one reported on that. But the moment when Trump does it, it's like, God help us all,
It depends. It depends on what media I'm looking at. I personally, again, feel that I have sympathy for them, and to some extent, as an American, I feel like guilty. We did that to those countries, so why not help them? Why not allow them to come in for the mess that we've created?
That they are strong and brave and resilient human beings, and that they are human, and humans, fight for their lives, and that I'm sorry that our country doesn't see that and honor that, and that there are many of us here fighting for them.
Go back. I know it's harsh. I know it's crazy in your country, but a lot of these countries run by socialism ideas, and I think the past couple of weeks have proven that socialism does not work. And I think the time and work that was spent getting here could be used to fixing and reconstructing those countries' governments and policies. Start by adopting a capitalistic society. It's going to be tough at first. I mean, hell, look at the way this country was founded, our capitalistic ideas. We couldn't decide if we want a national bank or not. So, I mean, it's going to take some time. It's going to take a lot of work.
Personally, you're welcome to come here. I welcome you into my classroom as a teacher. I welcome you into feeling comfortable in Spanish class. I think I'm in a very privileged position where a lot of students that only speak Spanish feel very comfortable in my class, and I feel very honored to provide that education opportunity for them.